United States Vice President JD Vance may have given what may be the worst international speech in American history. He was at the Munich Conference where he attacked Europe, he attacked European democracies, and he praised Russia. I want you to watch this moment right here. I'll just show you this small clip first, where it was like 3 people who clapped at the speech, and they were just the people there with JD Vance, but everybody who was there in Europe were in stunned silence. And then they had the German minister give a speech after, and he just ripped JD Vance. So let's just play this clip first. Let's play it.
Then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
Now, let me just share with you a longer version of that clip, still a relatively short clip I'm going to show, where JD Vance basically says you should be fine with Russia's interference in your elections. Who gives a crap, he basically says, if Russia's interfering with elections in Europe? Cry about it. Europe is basically what he's saying. Here, play this clip.
We're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
As some have stated, Vance is basically making a speech here for Germany's extremist right-wing neo-Nazi AfD party. Their anti-immigration, Nazi pro-Putin party is basically the messaging that he's sending to the German people right there. And here, JD Vance also says, if you're running in fear of your own voters, America's not going to help you. Thin mandates produce unstable results. Really, like the very thin mandate that Donald Trump didn't even get 50% of the votes in this past election. Here, play this clip.
Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern, because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course,
you are listening to the Vice President of the United States of America, JD Vance, speaking at the Munich Security Conference, talking about obviously defense spending, but also really pulling back the curtain on what's happening in Europe. Brian and I were listening to him speak and amazed at some of the things that are happening there, not being able to.
Now, let me show you what the German defense minister, Boris Pistorius, is saying. First, he takes a jab at Donald Trump and saying, look, I may not be the most famous deal maker in the world, but I would know that in a negotiation, you don't give away all of your main negotiating chips before a negotiation starts. That would seem to be evident to me, but what do I know? Here, play this clip.
I emphasized it already several times. I'm not the world's most important and famous deal maker. But if I were, I would know that I don't take any essential point of negotiations off the table before the negotiations begin.
And of course, there he was talking about how Donald Trump stated that he doesn't want Ukraine to be a member of NATO. Donald Trump said he doesn't think Ukraine should be entitled to their own land, their own pre-2014 borders. Also, Donald Trump said he wanted Russia to be part of the G7 and to make it the G8. So what the German foreign minister was saying right there, German defense minister Boris Pistorius was saying there was, you gave away the negotiation before. That seems like a pretty weak negotiation. Here he is again, Germany's federal minister of defense, saying that we need to stand strong. There will be no lasting peace in Europe without a strong and free Ukraine. It's great to see Germany and others in Europe standing up, not just to Putin, but to a weak and neutered United States. Play this clip.
Because one thing remains unchanged. There will be no lasting peace in Europe without a strong and free Ukraine. There will be no sustainable rules-based order if aggression prevails. We must equally make sure that Russia does not emerge from this war as an even bigger threat than before. A fragile peace that only postpones the next war is not an option. Yesterday, there was strong consensus among NATO allies that imperialist powers will only respond to deterrence and strength, be it in Europe or in the Indo-Pacific. Therefore, we must and we will negotiate from a position of strength.
Now, I want you to watch this clip right here. This is pretty incredible, where the German defense minister, Boris Pistorius, is slamming JD Vance's speech right here as undemocratic. He calls what JD Vance is saying not acceptable. And he says, here in Germany, we fight for your right to disagree against us. Here, play this clip.
This is why I cannot just ignore what we heard before. I cannot not comment on the speech we heard by the US Vice President. We fight for your right to be against us. That is the motto, one of the mottos of the Bundeswehr, and it stands for our democracy. This democracy that was just called into question by the US Vice President, and not just the German democracy, but Europe as a whole. He spoke of the annulment of democracy, and if I understood him correctly, he compares the condition of Europe with the condition that prevails in some authoritarian regimes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not acceptable.
That's it.
This is not acceptable. This is not the Europe, not the democracy where I live and where I conduct my election campaign right now. And this is not the democracy that I witness every day in our parliament. In our democracy, every opinion has a voice, and it makes it possible for parties that are partly extremist, such as the AfD, and they can campaign just as any other party. This is democracy. And if the Vice President had the opportunity to switch on his TV set when he arrived yesterday, he would have seen one of those candidates in primetime TV. By the way, we even admit media that spread Russian propaganda, and the representatives of the federal government answer their questions. Nobody is excluded. But democracy does not mean that a vociferous minority will automatically be right, and they cannot decide what truth is. It does not mean that anyone can say anything, and democracy must be able to defend itself against extremists that try to destroy it. I am happy to live in Europe where this democracy is defended every day against its internal and external enemies. And therefore, I would like to explicitly contradict and oppose the impression that Vice President Vance suggested here, that our democracies oppress and silence minorities. We not only know against whom we defend our countries, but also what we defend it for. It's for democracy, for freedom of opinion, for the rule of law and the dignity of each and every one, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, but unlike the Vice President, I would also like to focus my speech on the most pressing questions of European and transatlantic security. The last days have confirmed what many had speculated for months. The United States are pushing for a quick peace settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and they expect Europe to take the lead in securing any agreement that follows.
You saw he was getting basically a round of applause. The room was loving what he was saying. Now contrast that to JD Vance right here, where JD Vance says, basically, if we can survive Greta Thunberg scolding us, then you're just going to have to deal with Elon Musk interfering with your elections. Play the clip.
Speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor. If American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk. But what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't.
Yeah, this is some sick stuff right here, where JD Vance says that the biggest worry that he has about Europe, this is what JD Vance says, is not Russia or China. He goes, it's the European people. He goes, it is the enemy from within Europe, just borrowing Donald Trump's line, where Donald Trump said that the American people are the enemy, not our actual enemies. Play this clip.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them.
Then JD Vance brags about Brexit and again further attacks Europe. Play this clip.
No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more, And by the way, this follows Pete Hegseth yesterday, where Pete Hegseth, the Fox host, who is apparently the Secretary of Defense right now in the United States of America, just compare the defense minister from Germany to this clown we have in the United States, Pete Hegseth. And Hegseth's like, yeah, you could talk about values all you want, but you can't shoot a value, man. America, you can't shoot values. Here, play this clip.
As President Trump has said, but it's not enough. Nor is 3%, nor is 4%, more like 5%. Real investment, real urgency. We can talk all we want about values. Values are important. But you can't shoot values. You can't shoot flags, and you can't shoot strong speeches. There is no replacement for hard power. As much as we may not want to like the world we live in some cases, there's nothing like hard power.
By the way, while all of this was going on in Munich, you had President Zelensky of Ukraine meeting with a bipartisan delegation of United States senators. It should be noted, you'll see a lot of Republicans there as well. Spineless Republicans who will go in that room with Zelensky, shake his hand and say, we got your back, we're rooting for you, while enabling, promoting Donald Trump and JD Vance to destroy Ukraine. But just watch watch to me. I mean, I guess it's good they're there with Zelensky. There's Democrats and Republicans in that room, but those are the same Republicans that are enabling the destruction of America, the criminality that's been unleashed, the authoritarianism in America, and the threats to Zelensky. Arguably, there's no one more dangerous to Zelensky, aside from Putin, than the Republicans looking at him in this room right now. Play this clip.
How you doing? Hi. Good to see you, pal.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
You look good. How's it going?
Really?
How you doing?
Yes.
Hang in there.
Hang in there.
You're my friends here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much for this.
Then you had Democrats like Democratic Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan and others. I'm just going to show you this one clip apologizing to Europe for JD Vance's speech, saying this does not reflect who a lot of America is. And I'm sorry. She goes, I am sorry. I'm disappointed. I'm so sorry for what he just said. Here, play this clip.
I was enormously disappointed by the speech. It was in no way, shape, or form what I would have hoped for from the Vice President of the United States of America. And why was that? He spent no time talking about Ukraine. He never once said the word Ukraine or Russia, as far as I remember. And rather, he spent the time, curiously enough, criticizing the European continent for the very things that we in the United States struggle with ourselves. And I felt like it was sort of a pot and kettle situation, where I felt like I wasn't really sure why that moment in our history, our collective history, needed to be about that subject. I felt like it needed to be about whatever the Wall Street Journal article you were talking about was. I feel like that's much more appropriate than the language that was here. So I walked away, to be honest, feeling, and I'm going to say it out loud, I felt like that I am sorry. I'm sorry for that speech for the continent of Europe. And I'm sorry for a significant population of America, maybe the majority of America, who I think will be disappointed with the tone of that speech.
And while all of this is going on, we learned that as part of the attack on the government by Donald Trump and Elon Musk, around 300 employees at the agency responsible for maintaining America's nuclear weapon arsenal and combating nuclear terrorism have been fired, and they have been laid off. And so exposing our nuclear arsenal to risk. There you have it, folks. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers. You helped us hit 4 million yesterday. Let's get to 5. Thanks for watching.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.